performers are people who have sustained excellence over an extended period of time. And that excellence is not just external, but it's also internal. High performers have figured out a way to transform what others see as threat into challenge. And that's what we're talking about in this video. This is really life-changing stuff. Let's get going. Hi friends, I'm Yellin. I'm author of Unforgettable Leadership, 7 Principles for Leading, Learning, and Living, and really nerdy about the topic that we are talking about in this video, the topic of high performers. What is it that they do? What is it that they don't do? And what are just some really practical ways that can help all of us reach new levels of performance? So many people have said this in many different ways, but the truth is success really does leave clues. I'm a big fan and I'm certified in neuro-linguistic programming, which is a whole field of study that takes a look at what are the thought processes, what are the communication styles, the habits, the actions of really high-performing people. And we've learned a lot. And the truth is that if we want to be high-performing people, let's take a look at what they do. In the same way that if you wanted to be independently wealthy, you would study the actions and the beliefs of independently wealthy people. If you wanted to be really healthy and fit, you would study the actions of really healthy, fit people. Well, when it comes to high performance, let's just pause a little bit and take a look at what they do and what they don't do. Now, one of the models that I love and I talk about a lot in coaching and workshops and on these videos is a model that we call the results model. There are many different versions of it, but essentially they all lead to the same concept. And that is this, that the results that we're experiencing in our life are coming from actions we either are or are not taking. So we have to take ownership of all the results that we have in our life right now. It's coming from actions we either know to take and are willing to take, or actions that we know are actually leading us against the kinds of results that we're trying to create. In fact, I oftentimes will see people taking actions that are contributing to the very thing they've been complaining about, sometimes even for years on end, and I've been guilty of that myself. But let's take a look at high performers. So high performers being not only people who are achieving great external results, but they're doing it in a way that there's calm and sanity and peace in their life. High performance and excellence really is about creating these amazing results, but doing it in a way so it doesn't eat you alive. So taking it back to this model, if that's the result that we're looking for, we want to step back and think about what are the actions that either are going to lead to this or are going to lead away from that goal. There's so many books written about the habits of high performers. Great books. So we can read about all these different actions. Some common themes are going to be they have a predictable morning routine. They typically are planners. They're goal setters oftentimes. They have accountability. You might read that they take care of their physical health as well as their mental health. They bring good people around them. So those are all actions, and those are fantastic, and there's volumes already written on that. But at even a deeper level, I want you to think about what are the beliefs that are driving those actions, that are helping them achieve those results. Because when we get the beliefs right, the actions and the results become much easier for us. So when we think about the beliefs of high performers, we really want to think about what are the beliefs that they hold about what's possible? What are the beliefs that they hold about their own ability? What are the beliefs that they hold about the people that they surround themselves with? So when you think about the beliefs about what's possible, digging down just a little bit deeper, consider what it takes to move into this realm of high performers. Oftentimes, it means moving into the unknown, and the unknown can be incredibly scary. So I want to take a deeper look at how these high performers have managed to reframe, if you will, what many people see as threat, they can see as a challenge. Be it the unknown, or be it a setback, or be it an obstacle that shows up in the path of them pursuing the result that they are committed to achieving as a high performer. Now, in 1974, there was a book written by Timothy Gallwey called The Inner Game of Tennis. And essentially, it was giving a very different strategy on how to learn tennis. But much, much bigger than that, he gives us a formula and some thoughts on how to improve performance in any sport, in any area of our life. So in this book, The Inner Game of Tennis, he gives us a formula, which is capital P equals lowercase p minus lowercase I. What this formula is telling us is that our performance is our potential minus interference. Now that was a very different belief that was introduced in 1974, and honestly, it's a very unique belief even today. Because when we think about high performer, oftentimes we think, okay, what else do we need to do? And we add and we add and we add this task or this action or this discipline. And what Timothy Gallwey was proposing before we had a lot of the research and science to back it up was that high performers is not necessarily about doing more. It's actually more about reducing interference. So the image that always comes to my mind is if you've ever been driving down the road and maybe you're outside the range of your normal radio stations. So you're dialing in and it's static, static, static. But when the interference goes away and the signal gets clear, there's absolute clarity in the radio station. And I like that image when it comes to high performance. What about if high performance isn't about doing more, but rather about reducing the interference? Now he goes into the book a little bit deeper and he talks about a self one and a self two. Self one, we all have both of these. Self one being that critical voice. I call these wild things. Other people have called them gremlins, but it's that voice in your head, let's say you're learning tennis, that is telling you, watch the ball, move your arm. I don't really play tennis, but just go with it for a second. Swing the racket. Run over there. It's that voice that is being critical and it's analytical. Self two is the laid back, ease, flow voice. And so when Timothy Gallwey is teaching people to play tennis, he is basically saying bounce, hit. Just bounce, hit. Watch the ball bounce, hit, bounce, hit, bounce, hit. And the strategy behind it is to lower the interference of self one. And his theory, which is, you can watch lots of videos and see some pretty amazing results, is that if we can lower the interference of self one, that self two, our natural potential, can step into its biggest voice and it can propel us to high performance, not only externally, but maintaining the sanity and the clarity and the calm in the process. And that's what we want with high performance. That was 1974. Fast forward all these years, now that we have brain imaging that allows us to see what Timothy was proposing in very vivid ways, is that self-one is threat. And when your brain is under threat, here are some of the signs that you're absolutely going to see. We've all heard fight or flight. Yes, but here's what it looks like. We get defensive. We get committed to being right. We second guess, so we hesitate or we choke. It also looks like I'm committed to my way or the highway. I'm not as collaborative anymore. And in fact, when my brain is under threat, the visual field literally narrows so that I could focus on the threat that's coming at me. But internally, the exact same thing is happening. When that self-one voice is in control and our brain perceives something as threat, those are the natural outcomes that we can expect to see. And maybe even worse. We actually, if our brain's under threat for a long period of time, it impacts your health. It lowers your ability to be creative and innovative and see possibilities, to believe in yourself, to obviously see from different perspectives of others. And so you might have witnessed, even within your organization, a very us against them mindset. People start turning on each other. We saw that during the pandemic. We were under threat for a long period of time, and you saw racial tensions, and we saw people storming the Capitol. We started imploding. Those are all outcomes of our brains seeing the unknown and perceiving it as threat. So it's just a fascinating study. Well, we know that if we're going to reach performance, high performance, we're going to have to enter into the unknown. We're going to have setbacks. We're going to encounter obstacles. So the key here is, how do we identify that and we reframe that threat as challenge? Because your brain doesn't care if the threat is real or perceived. If it's perceived as threat, then your brain is going to respond as if it's threat, and we'll see all of those outcomes. So how do we then shift the same event from threat to challenge? Now, before I leave this topic, not all threat is negative threat. Some threat's pretty motivating. It motivates us to prepare, let's say, for a presentation, or it motivates us to get ready for a video, or it motivates us to get up in the morning because we don't want to lose our job. When I'm talking about negative threat, which, by the way, is oftentimes what we're going to see high performers reframe, is that there's a lack of complete clarity. You have to go into the unknown. A second criteria is we don't feel like maybe we have all the choice and voice over everything. We're not 100% in control. And then the third criteria for negative threat is that we perceive a negative consequence. So pause that for a minute, because if our goal is to lower the interference of threat, we're going to have to tackle those three characteristics. Now, the flip side of that, when your brain is not on threat, when your brain is on what I call in my book challenge, then you see very different outcomes. People are not 100% committed to being right. They can engage in meaningful conversation, and they can be open-minded, and they can be curious. You're going to see people be collaborative. They're going to ask each other for help because there's a willingness to be transparent and vulnerable. You're going to see people see possibilities where other people see a dead end, because the creative, innovative part of their brain has been sparked. So that's what we want to see. So let's say you've got two people that are confronted with the exact same event, and one brain perceives it as threat and one brain perceives it as challenge. Which of the two are more likely to be the high performer? not only externally, but also internally. So I remember when I was in college, I thought I was this really amazing writer, and I soon learned I had a long way to go. But I had a professor one time that not only gave me an F on a paper, but wrote the word eek out to the side of it. And in that moment, my brain did not perceive that as threat. If it had of, my guess, I might not have majored in English. I might not have gone on to write. I might not even be talking with you today. But my brain in that moment perceived that as challenge. Like, okay, professor, hit me with your best shot. Let's see what you got. I can show you something else. Well, let's take those two people again. Let's say you've got two people on your team and they're going to need to maybe make a presentation to an executive leadership team. And one brain perceives that as threat. And they move into all the reasons why it's not going to work because there's an unknown about it. In fact, they might even get resentful that you've asked them to do this presentation because they're anticipating a negative outcome, or they don't feel like they have a lot of choice and voice. Versus the second person who sees possibilities. What an opportunity to get in front of the executive leadership team. And this is a topic that I can get behind. And I have people who can help me learn how to do this and give me feedback so that I'm successful in this moment. What makes the difference between person one, who allows self one threat to dominate, and the difference between person two, who can dial down the interference of threat and dial down the interference of self one? The event is the same. Well, oftentimes it is experiences that we've had from the past, but it's the belief. It's the belief that we're holding in that moment and the actions that we choose to take or not to take. So I just wanted to give you some practical ideas. I want you to think about right now, what is an event that's been presented to you, and what's the interference surrounding that event? Maybe it's a task that you've been asked to do and you feel like it's impossible, or there's no way anybody can be successful. Maybe it's a relationship in your life. Whatever is nagging at you, maybe waking you up at night, something that you're anticipating a negative consequence to. I want you to just pause for a minute and really think about what's an event that has shown up in your life that is causing interference with you at your highest level of performance. Okay, got that? Got your interference. So I want you to take that and I want you to think through 5 questions. Okay, there may be more than 5, but basically 5 questions. First of all, what meaning am I giving this? Is a fabulous question to even hit pause before your brain creates a story that is going to either escalate interference or de-escalate interference. Find out, what meaning am I giving this? So if the person doing the presentation pauses, what meaning am I giving this? A second powerful question that you can ask to maintain calm and to reframe threat to challenge. What meaning do I want to give this? Just recognizing that you can give that interference, that event, whatever meaning you want. But the meaning you choose to give it is going to drive your results externally and internally. A third question is, does this deserve my attention or my energy? Attention meaning it deserves me to do something with it, to acknowledge it, to address it. But energy means there's a whole other level of emotional exhaust that I'm willing to give over to this. And I venture to say that about 99% of the events and interference that's showing up in our life is asking for our attention, but very little deserves our precious energy. Okay, a fourth question that I want you to ask. the next time that you're seeing the interference impacting your performance is, what is mine to own here? And what isn't mine to own? Getting really, really clear. And the reason why is, not only are these questions helping you get to that clarity where there has been confusion, but it's also allowing you to see where you do have choice and where you do have a voice, and where you may be overstepping your bounds. Oftentimes the people that I work with tend to be massive over-owners, and that is as destructive to performance as not taking ownership. So that's a great question for you to give it a try. Okay, my fifth question that I love here is, how do I respond to this event that's causing interference in a alignment with who I aspire to be and what I aspire to achieve? So just being super thoughtful about what is the result, not only internally, but also externally, that I'm wanting, and how do I respond to this in alignment with who I want to be and what I aspire to be. So just a really quick recap about this idea of high performance. High performance is not only achieving amazing external results over an extended period of time, but it's doing it in a way that there is calm and love in your life and sanity. If we want to do that, we really want to step back, and rather sometimes than asking, what do I need to be doing more of, we really want to take a look at, where do I need to reduce the interference? And that being, how do I reduce the threat that is blocking all the possibilities? We can easily do that by thinking through 5 questions. What meaning am I giving it? What meaning do I want to give it? Does this deserve my attention or my energy? What is mine to own here and what isn't mine to own? And finally, how do I respond in alignment with who I want to be and what I aspire to achieve? Ultimately, when we lead, learn, and live the way the brain works best, we simply get better results with less effort. So if our result that we're looking for is high performance, let's take a look at what are ways that we can reduce the interference so that we can remove obstacles to reaching our absolute personal best. If you like this video, I'd love for you to share it, hit subscribe, join us next time. And in the meantime, let's all really stay committed to this pursuit of high performance, no matter what.